Hey YouTube, Poopslag here, and this is TurboFat, an open source puzzle game I'm making in Godot. Source code's linked below if you want to see how it all works. But this month I was converting the whole game from Godot 3 to Godot 4 like last month, but I had to stop because something went horribly wrong, and I'll explain what that is in just a minute, so sit tight. So the three big things left to convert to Godot 4 were the puzzles, the creatures, and the overworld. And for the puzzles, I looked at these rainbow lights. They got two parts to them, this little rectangular glowy bit and the glow behind it. And these are two separate tile maps, which in Godot 3, we would create the tiles on the fly with like tile IDs, like 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we got to create tile alternatives, which in Godot 4, for whatever reason, are numbered like 17, 18, 19. They just start from some random ass number and they're never in sync with each other. So I got to store those separately. I got to keep track of what are the tile alternatives for each of these colors. And also, you can't key these by colors anymore. For some reason, colors don't work as dictionary keys. So you got to key them by like the color hex code or something janky like that. So in Godot 4, a whole bunch of particle properties changed. Names like initial velocity and scale are no longer on particles, but instead there's scale min and scale max. There's a whole bunch of these. Also, the emission shape enum values changed around, so you'll want to check that. And the particle gradients changed from being gradient texture 2D to 1D. So there's some weird bugs in TurboFat's chat system. First of all, the logic for figuring out how tall these windows should be when new text is entered. That was breaking unless you set visible characters behavior to characters after shaping. Otherwise, the line count would be wrong. Secondly, this texture that moves around in the back, you have to set repeat enable on the shader now, not in the texture import. That setting is moved. Signals are now emitted in a slightly different order, so this logic for marking a UI event as consumed to prevent the character from moving around when you select menu options, right? That logic was now suppressing all events, so I had to make it a little bit more narrow and say, well, only suppress these 4 events. And lastly, text labels used to have a clear method to clear the text in them, and that's been repurposed, so it no longer clears the text. And it's sort of unintuitive and actually sort of faked out the Godot developers themselves, but they've fixed the documentation, so at least it's now accurate, even if it's a little weird. So none of the game's controls are working, and it turns out this is because all of Godot's scan codes changed between Godot 3 and Godot 4, so I had to go around and fix all those values. I also created a little demo to help me track down some bugs related to this. So the creature visuals almost work completely out of the box in Godot 4 with two weird gotchas. The first is the way cubic interpolation works in animation players. It used to say like go from this value to this value kind of smoothly, and in Godot 4, whatever reason, it like goes from this value all the way up here and then comes back down. And I don't know why they did that, but you got to add some new keyframes or twiddle them a little bit so that they don't go nuts on you. The other thing is the way animation player stop works. I used to use animation players to move the arms and legs to certain places. And now they'll snap back to their original settings unless you call stop with a value of true, which means stop the animation but keep their new locations. So I only used one animation tree in my entire game, but it's for this little onion guy, and it completely didn't work in Godot 4. Took me a little while to figure out it's because of these little nodes where the advanced mode now defaults to enabled, and apparently enabled means it does nothing, it just doesn't work. So you got to go around and change all these to auto, which fixes it. Auto was the default in Godot 3, but apparently in Godot 4 they went in a different direction. So my game has a handful of little dialogues. When they pop up, it stops you from playing the game. And then when they disappear, the game comes back. And it turns out that whole when the dialogue disappears, the game comes back thing, you can't do that in Godot 4. They took away the hook for checking when a dialogue is closed. So I had to write my own code to do that. That's kind of surprising, but there it is. So in Godot 3, if you wanted to clip a scene to like an arbitrary shape like an oval, you would actually create a light 2D, put it alongside it, and then set it to clip mode. And now instead, it's a much more sensible approach where you just have a parent node with a clipping shape and you set it to clip children. So that's a lot better now. So last, the big one, all my indoor tiles are sort of like slanted to the right a little bit, like old school games like Double Dragon or Battletoads or whatever. And this is done with a feature called Cell Custom Transform in Godot 3, where you can just give it an arbitrary matrix transformation to like skew rectangular tiles. And Godot 4, your tiles just have to be rectangles, and there is no workaround. It's the feature isn't there yet. I've put in a request for enhancement. Maybe they'll add it someday, but until that's in, I cannot convert TurboFat to Godot 4. It's just a dead end. So yeah, sadly, TurboFat cannot make it to Godot 4, but it wasn't a total waste of time. I did learn a lot about Godot 4, which I am going to apply to Frog Finder. And I also found a few bugs in TurboFat that I'm going to fix. For example, the particles, we're trying to randomize like their orientation with this angle random property, but if the angle is set to 0, it turns out this just does nothing. So I fixed those places. I also noticed when the onion monster who goes up in the sky, he has a little dirt patch below him, and that dirt patch was like appearing for a split second in night when it became day again. So I fixed that. And lastly, this big your backup failed message, which shows up sometimes if something goes wrong with your save data. I had it happen during a power outage, for instance, but this message, it wasn't getting translated into Spanish, so I fixed that. So the hook is there and it can be translated. The biggest problem with not upgrading to Godot 4 is these shadows. I wanted to have them translucent in a canvas group so they would overlap correctly and you wouldn't get these janky overlapping bits. But instead in Godot 3, I'm just going to make them opaque. It's a little uglier, but it's functional. So that's it for June. I wish I could have seen the Godot 4 stuff at the end. It would have been fun playing with all the new toys, getting the shadows looking right, and things going faster, and maybe having threading on HTML5. Who knows? But it's all moot. Going back to Godot 3 for now. I got a little bit of code cleanup to do, and then this month I'll be starting on the next area, Chapter 4, Cannoli Sandbar, creating some scripts, coming up with some new level gimmicks and fun stuff. I mean, honestly, it'll be kind of cool building up some new fun toys instead of just fixing all this shit that was broken, so that's nice. Anyway, in the meantime, if you want to try out the game, it is still free on itch.io, and I didn't put up a new version because obviously I had really nothing to show, but the old version's still up there and it's still fun, so let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys next month.